Sarah pulled her tattered coat tighter around her thin frame as she navigated the icy streets of New York City. At 16, she had already spent too many winters surviving the bitter cold, with nothing but her wits and a threadbare blanket to keep her warm. The city was a harsh place, where the wealthy bustled about in their warm coats and fancy cars, seemingly oblivious to the struggles of those like her. She had learned to be invisible, blending into the background of the bustling city. Her days were spent scavenging for food, doing odd jobs, and trying to stay out of trouble. Despite her circumstances, Sarah held onto a flicker of hope that things might change. She dreamed of stability, of a place where she belonged, and of warmth that wasn't just from a fire escape vent. The air was frigid this particular morning, her breath forming clouds that dissipated almost as quickly as they appeared. Sarah's stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since the previous afternoon. She wandered through Central Park, hoping to find something discarded that she could eat or trade for food. The park was quiet, a stark contrast to its usual hustle and bustle. Snow covered the ground, muffling the sounds of the city and creating an almost serene atmosphere. Sarah's eyes scanned the area, always alert for an opportunity. That's when she saw it, something dark against the pristine white snow. Curiosity piqued, she approached and realized it was a luxurious briefcase, half buried in the snow. She glanced around, but no one seemed to be looking for it. Her heart pounded with a mix of excitement and caution. Picking it up, she quickly retreated to a more secluded area to examine her find. The briefcase was made of fine leather, clearly expensive. She fumbled with the clasp, her fingers numb from the cold. When it finally opened, her eyes widened at the sight of thick documents inside. She didn't understand their significance, but knew they were important. Her mind raced with the possibilities. Maybe there was something in here she could sell, something to get her through another week. But deep down, Sarah's moral compass pointed her towards doing the right thing. She decided to return the briefcase, hoping that an act of honesty might bring her a small reward. Perhaps this was the opportunity she had been waiting for, a chance to change her fate. With the briefcase clutched tightly in her hands, Sarah made her way through the city streets. The address on one of the documents led her to an upscale apartment building. She hesitated outside, feeling out of place among the sleek cars and well-dressed doormen. Gathering her courage, she approached the entrance. The doorman, a tall man with a stern expression, eyed her suspiciously. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone implying that she didn't belong there. I found this briefcase," Sarah stammered, holding it up for him to see. "It belongs to Mr. Thompson. I came to return it." The doorman's eyes widened slightly as he recognized the expensive item. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "Wait here." He disappeared into the building, leaving Sarah standing nervously at the entrance. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours before the doorman returned. "Follow me," he said curtly, leading her through the grand lobby and up to a high-floor apartment. The elevator ride was silent, except for the soft hum of the machinery. Sarah's heart pounded louder with each passing second. When the elevator doors opened, the doorman led her to a penthouse door and knocked. After a brief pause, the door swung open to reveal Mr. Thompson himself. He was a man in his 50s, with a distinguished yet weary look. His eyes narrowed as he took in Sarah's disheveled appearance and the briefcase in her hands. "Yes?" he asked, his voice low and guarded. Sarah swallowed hard. "I found this in the park," she explained, extending the briefcase towards him. "I thought you might want it back." Mr. Thompson's expression shifted from suspicion to surprise. He took the briefcase, opening it quickly to confirm the contents. His eyes softened slightly as he looked back at Sarah. "You could have kept this," he said quietly. "Why bring it back?" Sarah shrugged, unsure of how to articulate the complex mix of hope and desperation that had driven her decision. "It didn't belong to me," she said simply. Mr. Thompson studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Thank you," he said, a touch of warmth entering his voice. "Wait here." He turned and disappeared into the penthouse, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. When he returned, he held out a small stack of bills. "Here," he said. For your honesty. Sarah's eyes widened at the sight of the money, but she hesitated. I wasn't looking for a reward. Mr. Thompson smiled slightly, a genuine, if rare, expression. Take it. And if you'd like, stay for a meal. You look like you could use one. Sarah's stomach growled in response, and after a moment's hesitation, she nodded. Perhaps this was the chance she had been hoping for, a small step towards something better. Sarah followed Mr. Thompson into his penthouse, her eyes wide with wonder. The stark contrast between the opulence of his home and the harsh reality of her life on the streets was almost overwhelming. The penthouse was filled with luxurious furniture, elegant artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the city skyline. She felt out of place, like an intruder in a world she didn't belong to. Sit, Mr. Thompson said, gesturing towards a plush armchair. Sarah hesitated for a moment before sinking into the soft cushions, feeling both comforted and uneasy. Mr. Thompson disappeared into another room, leaving her alone to take in her surroundings. A few minutes later, he returned with a tray of food, sandwiches, fruit, and a steaming cup of hot chocolate. Sarah's mouth watered at the sight. She hadn't had a proper meal in days. Mr. Thompson set the tray in front of her and sat across from her, watching as she tentatively took a bite of a sandwich. Eat, he encouraged gently. You look like you need it. Sarah didn't need to be told twice. She devoured the food, savoring every bite. As she ate, Mr. Thompson studied her with a mixture of curiosity and concern. When she finally slowed down, he spoke again. What's your name? He asked. Sarah, she replied, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Sarah Johnson. Sarah, Mr. Thompson repeated, nodding. I'm Arthur Thompson. It's nice to meet you, Sarah. She nodded, unsure of what to say. The silence stretched between them, growing increasingly awkward. Mr. Thompson broke it with a question that caught her off guard. Why did you bring the briefcase back? He asked. You could have kept it, sold the contents, and no one would have known. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat. It didn't belong to me, she said simply. I thought maybe you'd give me a little something for returning it. Mr. Thompson's expression softened. Honesty is a rare quality these days, he said. And it's one I value greatly. He paused, as if considering his next words carefully. Sarah, you mentioned you're living on the streets. Do you have anywhere else to go? Sarah shook her head, a lump forming in her throat. No, sir, she whispered. I don't have anyone. Mr. Thompson sighed, rubbing his temples. I can't solve all your problems, he said slowly. But I can offer you a warm meal and a safe place to stay for the night. Would you accept that? Tears stung Sarah's eyes, and she nodded gratefully. Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Thompson stood up and gestured for her to follow him. He led her down a hallway to a guest bedroom. It was cozy and warmly lit, with a large bed covered in soft blankets. Sarah couldn't remember the last time she had slept in a real bed. You can stay here tonight, Mr. Thompson said. We'll figure out the rest in the morning. Sarah turned to him, her voice trembling with emotion. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I don't know how to repay you. He smiled gently. Just rest for now, Sarah. We'll talk more tomorrow. Left alone in the room, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over her. She lay down, pulling the blankets around her, and closed her eyes. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe and hopeful. As she drifted off to sleep, Sarah couldn't help but wonder what the future held. This small act of honesty had led her to a place of warmth and comfort, but she knew that real change would take time. She was ready to face whatever came next, holding on to the hope that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life. The next morning, Sarah woke up to the soft light of dawn filtering through the curtains. For a moment, she lay still, savoring the unfamiliar feeling of being warm and safe. Slowly, she sat up, stretching her sore muscles. The events of the previous day felt almost like a dream, but the luxurious surroundings of the guest bedroom confirmed that it was real. After a quick wash in the adjoining bathroom, Sarah put on her worn clothes and made her way to the living area. Mr. Thompson was already up, sitting at the dining table with a cup of coffee and a newspaper. He looked up as she entered, offering a small smile. "Good morning, Sarah," he greeted. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you," she replied, feeling a bit shy. "Better than I have in a long time." Mr. Thompson nodded and gestured to a chair. "Sit, please. I had some breakfast prepared." As Sarah took her seat, a housekeeper brought out a tray with scrambled eggs, toast, and fresh fruit. The sight of the food made her stomach growl, and she blushed, embarrassed by her hunger. "Eat as much as you want," Mr. Thompson said kindly. "You need to regain your strength." Sarah didn't need further encouragement. She ate quickly but tried to maintain some semblance of manners. Mr. Thompson watched her quietly, sipping his coffee. When she had finished, he set his cup down and folded his hands on the table. "Sarah," he began, "I'd like to know more about you. You said you have no family and nowhere to go. How did you end up on the streets?" Sarah hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. But something in Mr. Thompson's demeanor encouraged her to open up. She took a deep breath and began her story. "My parents abandoned me when I was young," she said softly. "They struggled with addiction and couldn't take care of me. I've been on my own for as long as I can remember, trying to survive day by day." Mr. Thompson listened intently, his expression somber. "That's a lot for anyone to handle, especially at your age," he said gently. "You've shown remarkable strength and resilience." Sarah looked down, her cheeks flushing at the compliment. "I just do what I have to," she murmured. Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, his eyes thoughtful. "I want to help you, Sarah," he said finally. "But I need to understand what kind of help you're looking for. Do you want to go back to school? Find a job?" Sarah's heart raced at the possibilities. "I'd like to go back to school," she admitted. "I want to have a future, something more than just surviving." Mr. Thompson nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. "That's a good start," he said. "Education is important. I can help you with that." Relief washed over Sarah, but it was quickly followed by a surge of uncertainty. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why help me?" Mr. Thompson's expression softened, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Because I see something in you," he said. "You remind me of someone I lost a long time ago. Helping you feels like the right thing to do." Sarah didn't press for more details, sensing that it was a painful subject for him. Instead, she nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I'll do my best to make the most of your help." He smiled warmly. "Call me Arthur," he said. "And we'll take this one step at a time." Arthur showed Sarah around the penthouse, explaining where everything was and making sure she felt at home. The tour ended in the study, a room filled with bookshelves and a large mahogany desk. "This will be our base of operations," Arthur said with a chuckle. "We'll get you enrolled in school and figure out what supplies you'll need." Sarah looked around, marveling at the sheer number of books. "I've always loved to read," she admitted. "It's one of the few things that kept me going." Arthur's eyes lit up. "Feel free to borrow any book you like," he said. "Reading is a wonderful way to learn and escape." They spent the rest of the morning making calls and filling out forms. Arthur's connections and influence made the process smoother than Sarah could have imagined. By lunchtime, she was officially enrolled in a local high school, set to start the following week. As they sat down for lunch, Sarah felt a sense of hope she hadn't experienced in years. The simple act of planning for the future was exhilarating. She couldn't help but smile as she looked across the table at Arthur. "Thank you," she said again. "I don't know how I can ever repay you." Arthur waved her gratitude away. "Just focus on your studies and make the most of this opportunity," he said. "That will be thanks enough." Over the next few days, Sarah settled into a routine. She spent her mornings studying and preparing for school, while Arthur worked in his office. In the evenings, they shared meals and talked about their days. Slowly, a bond began to form between them, built on mutual respect and a growing sense of trust. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Arthur shared more about his past. He spoke of his wife and daughter, who had died in a car accident years ago. The pain of their loss had driven him into solitude, shutting himself off from the world. "I saw so much of them in you," he said quietly. "Your strength, your resilience. It made me realize that maybe it was time to open my heart again." Sarah reached out and squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said sincerely. "And thank you for giving me a chance." Arthur smiled, his eyes misty. "Thank you for reminding me what it means to care," he replied. The days turned into weeks, and Sarah thrived in her new environment. School was challenging, but she threw herself into her studies with determination. Arthur was always there to support her, offering guidance and encouragement. As their bond deepened, Arthur began to see Sarah as more than just a girl he was helping. She became a daughter to him, filling the void that had been left by his family's tragedy. And for Sarah, Arthur became the father figure she had always longed for, someone who believed in her and wanted the best for her. Their relationship wasn't without its challenges. Sarah struggled with feelings of unworthiness, fearing that her past would always define her. But Arthur's unwavering support helped her to see her own potential and worth. Arthur and Sarah's newfound relationship continued to flourish as they navigated their daily routines. With school starting soon, Sarah's anticipation grew, mixed with a nervous excitement. Arthur's unwavering support made all the difference, and he was determined to ensure she felt prepared and confident. One morning, after a particularly productive session of planning for the foundation, Arthur broached a topic that had been on his mind. They were sitting in the study, surrounded by papers and books. "Sarah, I've been thinking about your future," Arthur began, looking at her thoughtfully. Sarah glanced up from her notes, her curiosity piqued. "What about it?" "I know you want to go back to school and eventually college," Arthur said. "But have you thought about what you want to do after that? What your long-term goals might be?" Sarah hesitated. The future had always seemed uncertain, a distant dream. "I've thought about it," she admitted. "I want to help people, like you've helped me. Maybe work at the foundation full-time, or become a social worker. I want to make a difference." Arthur smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "I think those are wonderful goals, Sarah. And I want to support you in every way possible." Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you, Arthur. Your support means everything to me." Arthur leaned back in his chair, his expression growing more serious. "There's something else I want to discuss with you. I've been considering a more formal arrangement." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Arthur took a deep breath. "I want to adopt you, Sarah. I want to make you officially part of my family. You've become like a daughter to me, and I think it's time we made it official." Sarah's eyes widened in shock. The idea of being adopted, of having a real family, was beyond anything she had dared to hope for. Tears welled up in her eyes as she tried to process his words. "Are you sure, Arthur?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You don't have to do this. I don't want to be a burden." Arthur reached out and took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "You're not a burden, Sarah. You're a blessing. I want this, and I think you do too. But it has to be your decision." Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Arthur. I want this more than anything. Thank you." Arthur smiled, his own eyes misty. "Then it's settled. We'll start the process as soon as possible." The decision to pursue adoption brought a new sense of purpose and excitement to their lives. They shared the news with the foundation staff, who were thrilled and supportive. The process was complicated and filled with legalities, but Arthur's determination and resources ensured that everything moved forward smoothly. As they navigated the adoption process, Sarah threw herself into her schoolwork and foundation responsibilities with renewed vigor. She felt a sense of stability and belonging that she had never known before. Every day brought new challenges, but she faced them with confidence, knowing she had Arthur by her side. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Sarah looked at Arthur with a mixture of gratitude and awe. "I can't believe how much my life has changed since I found that briefcase," she said softly. "It feels like a dream." Arthur smiled, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "It's real, Sarah. And it's only going to get better. We're a family now, and that means we'll face everything together." Sarah nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. "Thank you, Arthur. For everything." "Thank you, Sarah," Arthur replied, his voice filled with emotion. "You've given me a second chance at happiness. And I promise to do everything I can to make sure you have the future you deserve." As they sat together, the fire casting a warm glow over the room, they knew that their bond was unbreakable. They were no longer just two individuals brought together by chance. They were a family, ready to face whatever the future held. The foundation took shape faster than either Sarah or Arthur had anticipated. With Arthur's resources and connections, they quickly found a suitable building in a safe neighborhood to serve as the foundation's headquarters. Sarah was heavily involved in every step, from planning to execution, feeling a sense of purpose and fulfillment she had never known. Arthur hired a team of professionals, including social workers, educators, and counselors, all dedicated to helping at-risk youth. Despite her young age, Sarah became a valuable advisor, her first-hand experience providing crucial insights into what the kids needed most. Sarah's days were now filled with school, foundation work, and moments of quiet reflection in the penthouse she now called home. The transformation from street kid to student and advocate was remarkable. Her confidence grew as she excelled in her studies and contributed meaningfully to the foundation. However, the journey wasn't without its emotional hurdles. Sarah often found herself grappling with feelings of unworthiness, haunted by the shadows of her past. She worried that one day Arthur would realize she wasn't worth all the effort and support. These fears sometimes caused her to withdraw, creating a barrier between her and those who cared about her. One evening, after a particularly challenging day at school, Sarah returned to the penthouse feeling defeated. She had received a poor grade on a math test, and the familiar doubts began to creep in. Arthur noticed her distress and gently probed. "What's wrong, Sarah?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Sarah hesitated, then blurted out, "I failed my math test today. I thought I was doing well, but clearly, I'm not good enough." Arthur's eyes softened with empathy. "Sarah, a single test doesn't define your worth or your abilities. You've come so far and achieved so much already. This is just a bump in the road." "But what if I can't do it?" she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "What if I'm not good enough to make all of this worth it?" Arthur moved closer, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You are more than good enough, Sarah. You've proven that time and time again. We all face setbacks, but it's how we respond to them that matters. You have a resilience that most people can only dream of. Don't let one test shake your confidence." Sarah looked up at him, the sincerity in his eyes giving her the reassurance she needed. She nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. "I'll try to remember that," she said softly. "Good," Arthur said, smiling. "And if you ever need help with anything, you just have to ask. We're in this together, remember?" Sarah smiled back, feeling the warmth of his support. "Thank you, Arthur. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll never have to find out," he replied firmly. "Now, let's figure out a plan to tackle that math subject. We'll get you the help you need." Their bond continued to strengthen, built on mutual respect and unwavering support. Arthur's steadfast belief in Sarah helped her navigate the challenges of her new life, while Sarah's progress and determination gave Arthur a renewed sense of purpose and joy. Arthur helped Sarah find a math tutor, and she diligently attended sessions, determined to improve. With the tutor's guidance and Arthur's encouragement, Sarah's confidence in her mathematical abilities grew. She began to see her potential and embraced the challenge of turning her weaknesses into strengths. In addition to her academic pursuits, Sarah threw herself into the foundation's work. She spent hours brainstorming with the team, attending meetings, and even speaking at events to raise awareness and funds. Her passion was infectious, and her story resonated deeply with those she spoke to. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Arthur shared more about his past. He spoke of his wife and daughter, who had died in a car accident years ago. The pain of their loss had driven him into solitude, shutting himself off from the world. "I saw so much of them in you," he said quietly. "Your strength, your resilience. It made me realize that maybe it was time to open my heart again." Sarah reached out and squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said sincerely. "And thank you for giving me a chance." Arthur smiled, his eyes misty. "Thank you for reminding me what it means to care," he replied. The days turned into weeks, and Sarah thrived in her new environment. School was challenging, but she threw herself into her studies with determination. Arthur was always there to support her, offering guidance and encouragement. As their bond deepened, Arthur began to see Sarah as more than just a girl he was helping. She became a daughter to him, filling the void that had been left by his family's tragedy. And for Sarah, Arthur became the father figure she had always longed for, someone who believed in her and wanted the best for her. Their relationship wasn't without its challenges. Sarah struggled with feelings of unworthiness, fearing that her past would always define her. But Arthur's unwavering support helped her to see her own potential and worth. One evening, as they were finishing dinner, Arthur brought up a new idea. "Sarah, I've been thinking," he began. "There are so many kids out there like you, who just need a chance. What if we started a foundation to help them?" Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "A foundation?" "Yes," Arthur said, his excitement growing. "We could provide shelter, education, and support for homeless and at-risk youth. Give them the same opportunities you've had." Sarah's heart swelled with emotion. The idea of helping others like her was incredibly appealing. "That sounds amazing," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "I'd love to be a part of that." Arthur grinned. "Then let's do it," he said. "Together." And so, a new chapter began for both of them. They worked side by side, building a foundation that would offer hope and opportunity to countless young people in need. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, a testament to the power of love, trust, and second chances. With Arthur's encouragement, Sarah sought out extra tutoring for her math struggles. She met regularly with a tutor, gradually building her confidence and skills. Her grades improved, and she began to see that she was capable of achieving more than she had ever imagined. As she immersed herself in her studies, Sarah also dedicated time to the foundation. She worked closely with the staff, helping to develop programs and resources that would best serve the youth they aimed to support. The foundation quickly became a beacon of hope for many kids who, like Sarah, had once felt lost and alone. Arthur watched with pride as Sarah blossomed into a capable young woman. Her leadership at the foundation was inspiring, and her dedication to her education was unwavering. He knew that his decision to help her had been one of the best choices he had ever made. One afternoon, after a long day of meetings and schoolwork, Sarah and Arthur sat together in the study, discussing the foundation's progress. "We've helped so many kids already," Sarah said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "It's amazing to see how their lives are changing." Arthur nodded, his smile reflecting her excitement. "You've played a huge role in that, Sarah. Your insights and experiences have been invaluable. You're making a real difference." Sarah felt a surge of pride and gratitude. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Arthur. You believed in me when no one else did." Arthur's expression softened. "You deserved the chance, Sarah. You have so much potential, and I'm honored to be a part of your journey." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. It was the tutor, arriving for Sarah's math session. Arthur excused himself, leaving Sarah to her studies. Later that evening, as they sat down for dinner, Arthur brought up a topic that had been on his mind. "Sarah, I've been thinking," he began. "You've been doing exceptionally well in school and with the foundation. Have you considered what you might want to do after high school?" Sarah paused, contemplating the question. "I've thought about it," she admitted. "I want to go to college, but I also want to stay involved with the foundation. I want to help as many kids as possible." Arthur's eyes twinkled with pride. "I think that's a wonderful idea. We'll make sure you have the resources and support you need to achieve both goals." Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of clarity and purpose. "Thank you, Arthur. I'm excited for the future, and I'm grateful for everything you've done for me." Arthur reached across the table, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "The future is bright, Sarah. And we'll face it together." As the weeks turned into months, Sarah continued to thrive in her studies. She worked hard, determined to make Arthur proud and to honor the opportunity he had given her. Her grades continued to improve, and she even found herself enjoying subjects that had once seemed daunting. At the foundation, Sarah's role expanded. She began leading workshops for the younger kids, sharing her story and offering guidance and support. Her relatability and genuine care made her a natural leader, and the kids looked up to her. One day, as Sarah was preparing for a workshop, Arthur walked in, holding a stack of papers. "I have something for you," he said, handing her the papers. "College applications. I thought we could start looking at some options together." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The idea of college had always seemed like a distant dream, but now, with Arthur's support, it felt attainable. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I don't know where to start." Arthur smiled. "We'll figure it out together. Just like everything else." They spent the next few weeks researching colleges, filling out applications, and preparing for entrance exams. Arthur's guidance was invaluable, and Sarah felt more confident with each step they took. As they worked on the applications, Arthur couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. Sarah had come so far, and her determination and resilience were nothing short of inspiring. He knew that whatever path she chose, she would succeed. Sarah's excitement grew with each passing day. The future, once so uncertain and bleak, now held endless possibilities. And with Arthur by her side, she knew she could face any challenge that came her way. Sarah's hard work and determination continued to pay off, both in school and at the foundation. Her confidence grew as she saw the tangible results of her efforts. Yet, despite her successes, she knew the world outside Arthur's supportive presence was not always as understanding or kind. One day, as Sarah was leaving school, she overheard a group of students talking about her. "Did you hear she was homeless?" one girl whispered loudly to her friends. "She's just trying to get close to Mr. Thompson for his money." Sarah's heart sank, and she quickened her pace, wanting to escape the cruel gossip. Though she had expected some backlash, the reality of facing judgment and prejudice was painful. She arrived home, her usual enthusiasm dampened by the harsh words. Arthur noticed her subdued demeanor at dinner. "Sarah, is everything all right?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Sarah hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Some kids at school were talking about me," she admitted. "They said I'm only here for your money and that I don't belong." Arthur's eyes darkened with anger, but he kept his voice calm. "People often fear what they don't understand," he said gently. "They don't know your story, and it's easier for them to judge than to try and understand." Sarah nodded, though the hurt lingered. "It just feels like no matter how hard I work, my past will always follow me." Arthur reached across the table and took her hand. "Your past doesn't define you, Sarah. Your actions, your heart, and your dedication do. And anyone worth knowing will see that." His words provided some comfort, but Sarah still felt a pang of insecurity. Over the next few days, she threw herself even more into her work at the foundation, using it as a refuge from the harsh realities of school. The foundation continued to thrive, and Sarah's leadership played a significant role in its success. She worked tirelessly, organizing events, leading workshops, and mentoring the younger kids. Her passion was undeniable, and her story inspired many. However, the societal challenges persisted. At a fundraising event, a potential donor cornered Arthur, questioning his decision to support Sarah so publicly. "Aren't you worried about your reputation?" the donor asked. "She's not exactly the type we usually associate with." Arthur's response was firm and unwavering. "Sarah has more integrity and resilience than most people I've met. She's exactly the type of person we should associate with. If my reputation suffers because of my support for her, then so be it." Sarah overheard the exchange, and her heart swelled with gratitude and pride. Arthur's unwavering support gave her the strength to face the world's judgment. She realized that no matter what others said, she had a family who believed in her. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah continued to excel. She was accepted into several colleges, and she and Arthur celebrated each acceptance letter with joy and pride. She ultimately chose a nearby university, allowing her to stay involved with the foundation while pursuing her studies. At school, Sarah began to find allies. A few students who had initially judged her reached out, curious about her story. Slowly, she built a small group of friends who appreciated her for who she was, not where she had come from. One day, while working at the foundation, a young girl named Lily approached Sarah. Lily had recently joined the foundation's programs and was struggling with her own feelings of unworthiness and fear. "Sarah, how did you do it?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with admiration. "How did you get past everything people said about you?" Sarah knelt down to Lily's level, her heart filled with empathy. "It wasn't easy," she admitted. "But I had someone who believed in me and reminded me that my worth isn't defined by what others think. And now, I want to be that person for you." Lily's eyes filled with hope. "Do you think I can do it too?" Sarah smiled warmly. "I know you can. We'll face it together, just like Arthur and I did." Through her work at the foundation and her growing confidence, Sarah found that the judgments of others mattered less. What truly mattered was the difference she was making in the lives of kids like Lily and the unbreakable bond she shared with Arthur. As they sat together one evening, Arthur raised his glass in a toast. "To the future," he said, his eyes shining with pride. "And to facing it together." Sarah clinked her glass with his, her heart full. "Together," she echoed, knowing that no matter what society threw at her, she had a family and a purpose that would see her through. As Sarah and Arthur continued their work at the foundation, their bond grew stronger. They faced challenges together, and each success brought them closer. However, a major revelation was on the horizon, one that would change everything and test their resolve. One day, as Sarah was sorting through some old files in Arthur's study, she stumbled upon a photo album. Curiosity got the better of her, and she opened it, revealing pictures of Arthur with a woman and a little girl. They were smiling, happy, and carefree. The woman and child looked strikingly familiar to Sarah, almost as if she had seen them before. Arthur entered the room and saw Sarah with the album. His face tightened with emotion, but he didn't ask her to stop. Instead, he walked over and sat down beside her. "That's my wife, Margaret, and our daughter, Emily," Arthur said softly, pointing to the images. "They died in a car accident years ago. It was the hardest thing I've ever gone through." Sarah looked at him, her heart aching for the pain he had endured. "I'm so sorry, Arthur. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been." Arthur sighed deeply, his eyes distant. "It was. For a long time, I shut myself off from the world, convinced that I didn't deserve to be happy again. But then you came into my life, and you reminded me of them. Your resilience, your strength, it's like seeing a part of them again." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. "I'm glad I could help you, Arthur. You've given me a second chance at life, and I'll always be grateful for that." Arthur smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "You've helped me more than you know, Sarah. But there's something I need to tell you." Sarah's heart raced, sensing the gravity of his words. "What is it?" Arthur took a deep breath. Before the accident, Margaret and I had started the process of adopting a child. We had just received approval when they died. I never went through with it, but seeing you has made me realize that maybe it's time to complete that journey. Sarah's eyes widened in shock. You want to adopt me? Arthur nodded. Yes, Sarah. If you're willing, I'd like to make you officially part of my family. You've already become like a daughter to me, and I think it's time we made it official. Sarah was overwhelmed with emotion. The idea of having a real family, of being adopted by Arthur, was more than she had ever dared to hope for. But along with the joy came fear and doubt. Are you sure, Arthur? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't want to be a burden. What if people think you're making a mistake? Arthur's expression softened. I'm absolutely sure, Sarah. You're not a burden, and I don't care what anyone else thinks. You're family to me, and that's all that matters. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she embraced Arthur. Thank you, Arthur. I would love to be your daughter. The decision to adopt Sarah brought them even closer, but it also intensified the stakes. They knew that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but they were ready to face them together. As the news of Arthur's decision spread, they faced criticism and doubt from some quarters. People questioned Arthur's judgment, wondering if he was acting out of grief or misplaced guilt. But their bond remained strong, and they found unexpected allies in their fight. One evening, Arthur received a call from an old friend who had heard about his plans. Arthur, I just wanted to say that I admire what you're doing, the friend said. It takes a lot of courage to open your heart like that, and I think Sarah is very lucky to have you. Arthur was touched by the support. Thank you. It means a lot to hear that. Sarah has changed my life, and I'm committed to giving her the best future possible. The Foundation's board members also rallied around them, recognizing the positive impact Sarah had already made. Their support helped bolster Arthur and Sarah's resolve, and they continued their work with renewed determination. As Sarah settled into her new role as Arthur's daughter, she found herself growing even more confident. She excelled in her studies, and her leadership at the Foundation flourished. She and Arthur worked tirelessly to expand their reach, helping more kids find hope and opportunity. One day, as they were reviewing plans for a new outreach program, Sarah looked at Arthur and smiled. We've come a long way, haven't we? Arthur returned her smile, his eyes filled with pride. Yes, we have. And we're just getting started. The major revelation of Arthur's past and his decision to adopt Sarah had raised the stakes, but it also strengthened their bond and deepened their commitment to each other and the Foundation. Together, they faced the future with hope and determination, ready to overcome any obstacle that came their way. The adoption process was not without its hurdles. Sarah and Arthur faced bureaucratic red tape and societal skepticism, but their resolve never wavered. Their commitment to each other and their shared vision for the Foundation kept them going, even when the journey seemed daunting. One particularly challenging day, they sat together in Arthur's study, poring over legal documents and paperwork. Sarah could sense the weight of the moment, and a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. What if something went wrong? What if the adoption didn't go through? Arthur noticed her tension and reached over to squeeze her hand reassuringly. We're almost there, Sarah. Just a few more steps. Sarah nodded, drawing strength from his unwavering support. I know. It's just. I'm scared, Arthur. I don't want to lose this chance. Arthur's eyes softened with understanding. You won't lose it. We've come too far to turn back now. We'll face whatever comes together. Their determination was put to the test when they received a notice that a court hearing was required to finalize the adoption. The idea of standing before a judge, having their lives scrutinized, was intimidating, but they knew it was a necessary step. On the day of the hearing, Sarah dressed in her best clothes, trying to quell the butterflies in her stomach. Arthur stood by her side, a reassuring presence as they entered the courtroom. The room was imposing, with its high ceilings and stern-looking officials, but Sarah focused on Arthur's calm demeanor. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, began by reviewing their case. She asked probing questions about Arthur's motives, Sarah's past, and their plans for the future. Sarah answered as honestly as she could, her voice steady despite the nerves. Arthur spoke with conviction, detailing his commitment to Sarah and their shared mission through the foundation. Sarah has already proven herself to be an extraordinary young woman, he said. She's not only overcome tremendous adversity but has also dedicated herself to helping others. I have no doubt that she will continue to excel and inspire those around her. The judge listened carefully, her expression unreadable. Finally, she leaned forward, addressing Sarah directly. Sarah, do you truly want this? Do you feel ready to be a part of Mr. Thompson's family, knowing the responsibilities it entails? Sarah took a deep breath, meeting the judge's gaze. Yes, Your Honor. Arthur has given me a second chance at life, and I want nothing more than to be his daughter. I'm ready for the responsibilities and the opportunities this brings. The courtroom fell silent as the judge considered their words. Then, with a small but genuine smile, she announced her decision. I see no reason to deny this adoption. It's clear that both of you have a profound and positive impact on each other's lives. I hereby approve the adoption. Relief and joy washed over Sarah and Arthur. They embraced tightly, tears of happiness streaming down their faces. The journey had been long and arduous, but they had finally achieved their goal. As they left the courtroom, Sarah felt a new sense of belonging and security. She was no longer just a street kid trying to survive, she was part of a family, with a future full of possibilities. That evening, they celebrated at the penthouse, surrounded by friends and supporters from the foundation. There were speeches and toasts, laughter, and tears. Arthur raised his glass, his voice filled with emotion. To Sarah, he said, looking at her with pride and love. My daughter. Our journey has just begun, and I couldn't be prouder to call you my family. Sarah, her heart overflowing with gratitude and joy, echoed his toast. To family, she said, her voice strong and clear. And to the future. The approval of Sarah's adoption marked a new chapter in their lives. The foundation flourished under their combined leadership, reaching more kids than they had ever imagined. Their story, one of resilience, love, and second chances, inspired countless others to believe in the possibility of change. Sarah excelled in her studies and took on a more significant role at the foundation. Her passion and dedication were infectious, and she became a role model for many of the younger kids. Arthur watched with pride as she blossomed into a confident, capable young woman, knowing that their journey had just begun. One sunny afternoon, Sarah and Arthur sat in the foundation's garden, discussing their latest projects. We've come a long way, haven't we? Sarah mused, looking around at the vibrant flowers and the children playing nearby. Arthur nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. We certainly have. And it's all thanks to you, Sarah. You've given me a reason to believe in the future again. Sarah shook her head modestly. No, Arthur. We did this together. You believed in me when no one else did. You gave me a chance. Arthur's expression softened with emotion. You deserved that chance, and you've made the most of it. I'm so proud of you. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lily, the young girl Sarah had been mentoring. Lily beamed as she approached them, holding up a drawing she had made. Look, Sarah. I drew this for you. Sarah took the drawing, her heart swelling with pride. It depicted the foundation, with Sarah and Arthur standing at the entrance, surrounded by happy children. It's beautiful, Lily. Thank you. Lily's eyes sparkled with happiness. I wanted to show how much you and Mr. Thompson mean to all of us. You've changed our lives. Sarah hugged Lily tightly, tears of joy in her eyes. And you've changed ours, Lily. Remember that you can achieve anything you set your mind to. As Lily ran off to play, Arthur turned to Sarah, his eyes twinkling. You're making a real difference, Sarah. Just like we always dreamed. Sarah nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. And we're just getting started. That evening, they hosted a celebration at the foundation, marking the anniversary of Sarah's adoption. Friends, family, and supporters gathered to honor their journey and the incredible work they had accomplished. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, music, and the undeniable sense of community. Arthur took the stage, his heart full of pride and gratitude. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began. "This foundation, this family, wouldn't be possible without each and every one of you. Your support has made our dreams a reality." He looked over at Sarah, who was standing beside him, her eyes shining with emotion. "And to my daughter, Sarah, thank you for being the light in my life. Your strength, resilience, and compassion have inspired us all. I'm so proud of you." Sarah stepped forward, taking the microphone. "Thank you, Arthur. And thank you to everyone who has supported us. This foundation is proof that when we come together, we can create real change. We've built something incredible here, and I'm excited for what the future holds." As the crowd cheered and applauded, Sarah and Arthur shared a hug, knowing that their bond was stronger than ever. They had faced countless challenges and overcome them together, emerging as a true family. In the months that followed, the foundation continued to grow, reaching even more children in need. Sarah and Arthur's story became a beacon of hope, inspiring others to believe in the power of love and second chances. And as they looked toward the future, they knew that they were ready to face whatever came their way, hand in hand, as father and daughter.